Hi, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome back, everyone. It's Friday here on planet Earth in 2022. We are going to be looking at the astrology of the weekend and really just tying up the end of this particular lunar cycle that is so perfectly going to be visited. This position is going to be visited by Mercury in Aquarius today. So we get plenty of opportunity to intellectualize and really utilize our mental faculties right now, and our skill and our mental acuity and even our discipline to a certain extent to remind ourselves what this whole cycle was about as we're finishing out. So welcome back, everyone. Welcome if you're new to the channel. Thank you for being here. Special shout out to my subscribers on Subscribestar. It is growing and people are showing interest, which is great. New moon astrology forecasts are going to come out. These are going to be on subscriber only basis. So if you're interested in the past videos, maybe you haven't checked one out before, the bi-monthly, right? We look at the new moon and the full moon and we do it by sign. And there's a video tailored exclusively to your sign for that period of time. It's moving over to the subscriber only platform. It'll be an unlisted and private video. It'll be only linked to those people that are subscribing. So the link is in the description box so you can check it out. So, and I have a number of announcements that I'm going to intersperse into this report today because, as things come up, it's just a lot easier to kind of weave them in, right? This is what the storytelling is all about. So it's Friday. I'm really looking forward to it being Friday. I'm definitely on Andromedan starseed time. Are you the type of person, right? These are like starseed PSAs. Are you are you the type of person that likes to act on impulse and make plans in the moment because of how it feels and how it, triggers some sort of innate desire to experience something. And then when the time comes, a couple days, maybe a week or so later, and that moment arises, you're like, oh no, I don't want to do that at all. Or it's too peoply out there. I don't think I can do it, or whatever, right? So do you tend to be the person that your social network tends to label as flaky, or maybe you have just stopped being as social because of this? Well, you might be an Andromedan starseed, because time is just, it is not something, it functions completely differently for these individuals. And I can tell you for sure that my area of communication and broadcasting and what's right in front of me in terms of my immediate environment is definitely on Andromedan starseed time, right? Which is, I'm always late. And not that I don't think being punctual is important, but I'm on my time. If it is something that is much more of a group type of thing, or there's a responsibility attached to it, that will often override, right? But since this is my time, this is my offering, and it's very related to starseed types of ideas, I am really on my own timeline. So there's my starseed PSA for today, right? It helps to explain some of these types of traits that it's really about being free to be your innate self in any given moment. And so sometimes we put ourselves into positions where we have to then make changes. And it does seem flaky, right? Because time is just such a foreign concept, the way that we perceive time in this galaxy, at least, because Andromedan starseeds are from a different galaxy entirely. So, and that's something that you can, learn more about, and we can talk about if you ever get any of the readings from me, or there's any of the special reports that are starseed related, which actually is a great segue into another announcement that I'm going to be uploading a study guide and a video for subscribers only that is about a starseed's guide to the U.S. Pluto return, right? We're going to go into all the Pluto, the potential Pluto placements, the ones that are galactic and starseed degrees, especially. So if you find yourself with your Pluto, your natal Pluto there, we're going to go into all the aspects and how it connects to the current Pluto return cycle, because it's not just what happened this week. Oh, no, right? There is a retrograde of Pluto coming. And in fact, the natal U.S. Pluto was retrograde at the time. So when we hit that point, which will be July, I have a feeling that the undertones of transformation and power that Pluto represents in terms of the United States is going to be way more, it's going to be just more relevant, and it's going to be more accessible and experienceable by the United States citizenry, right? It's kind of interesting that things are happening in a different part of the world as this Pluto return is reaching its point for the first time ever since 1776. So pay attention. And so if you want to get that, that's also going to be subscribers only and only available to them. So that's something that you can consider getting yourself set up for so you can have access to that. All right, so let's see if there's any other announcements. Does anybody have anything they want to share? I'm going to move into the chat. It's exactly me. It's why I don't commit to anything. It's too risky, right? And it's too risky to your own personal feeling of freedom and independence. So it's not that Andromedan starseeds are flaky, non-committal people. It's because the primary resonance or frequency signature of Andromedan beings is, and Andromedan starseeds is full freedom, right? So they tend to be on the front lines of like the social revolution movements, and they also tend to be people that are really great at the initiatory phase of things, but follow through can be really difficult. This is when you know where your Andromedan nature is expressed in your chart, then you can see how you can use the attributes that are useful to you, see if there's any challenges, some sort of karmic tie to this, but to not necessarily think that that's a bad thing. It's just, you know, understanding it is why it's important to understanding your perspective. So when like I said, in my immediate environment, when I'm speaking, talking, broadcasting, thinking, writing, right, it needs to be free at any given time, and I can't rush it, which is why I'm very loose about these time frame of these transmissions, right? So, I'm awful with time. I'm late all the time on your own timeline. I love that. That's me. Yes, indeed. Time is stupid. I'm sure sometimes it is, right? And if you're into Star Trek at all, I've been watching Discovery, which is the first season was amazing. The second season made me want to vomit. And that's just very dramatic. It's just it was too much drama, not enough Star Trek, okay? That's just my personal opinion. Doesn't mean it wasn't good, but now we're into the third season. And time is a big part of the conversation right now. And the acknowledgement of the time was a fluid, not necessarily sentient, but fluid and interactive, right? It has a gravity and wormholes and things like that. So yeah, sometimes it probably is stupid. How can we possibly know what time could possibly be up to as a dimension, right? The fourth dimension is the potential to move through time. Okay, so yeah, I'm on my own timeline, and a lot of people are, and a lot of people have Andromedan starseeds, and we're about to go into a period where that might be relevant. In fact, it is, right? I mean, Andromeda, from the point of view of the Earth, right, is in a direct square right now in a direct square to the Pluto return point where Pluto currently is and the natal Pluto of the United States. So it's absolutely relevant in terms of liberation and being free and on one's own trajectory and timeline, and to spread the wings, right? And so it's in a direct square to the Pluto position right now. Wow, that is a really interesting and cool connection. I didn't even make it that far. I just the PSA was just something that happened because I was late, and I was like, oh, that'll be fun. But yeah, it's in, and so we'll talk about this in the Starseeds Guide to Pluto. As a Pleiadian, I'm emotionally on my own timeline, and my healing ignores society. Yeah, because your society is definitely more of the Sag, Libra on, right? And Pleiadian being primarily very Taurus oriented, very earth oriented, very communally connected to natural rhythm. Yeah, your healing ignores society because it's not even about society at that point. It's about tapping into the, society of nature, really, not human society. It's interesting. The Pleiadian nature is interesting right now because it's seemingly not social at all, but it totally is. This is why the Earth Star Chakra is in my opinion very important to have an established connection with right now. Anyway, so yeah, I like waxing starseed. So these these are some good things to be aware of. And then, yeah, the last announcement, actually, this is also great, is that, let me get out of studio mode here and let me show you the flyer for this event. And I have the link in the description box, actually, in order to register. It's a free event. It's Bridging Sky and Earth, Embody Your Star Wisdom. It's being hosted and put together and facilitated by Jamie Goldstein. Some of you know me because of the last summit she did, which was about Mercury retrograde and the whole alchemy of the Mercury ruled signs. And it's an earth elemental year for Mercury, right? It's going retrograde in all of the air signs and just came out of a retrograde in Aquarius and very recently came out of that shadow. Anyway, so I did a whole presentation on Orion and the Orion starseed. So she's doing this now, and we did an awesome interview, right? So it's going to be 30 speakers, and she's interviewing pretty much all of them and just having a one-on-one conversation about their perspective on the subject, Bridging Sky and Earth. And as starseeds, I mean, this is pretty important. It's pretty directly important on many levels, right? To actually bridge, like we are, in fact, one of the main components of the bridge. It's like I have this bridge over the creek on my property that is meant to be, at one point, was meant to be like the bridge into the property that you would drive over. And you can drive over it, but the original structure are these steel beams that are holding up the lumber. And the person we bought the house from, like, they did kind of a shit job with putting these planks, right? Anyway, we're like the steel beams. We're like these girders in this bridge. And that's not to say that we're better than anybody else. It's not like that at all. It's just that you're bringing in all of that star wisdom from a very many lifetimes and many experiences in order to be this bridge, because this is going to be an important part of humanity making their evolutionary leap right now. I mean, anyway, let's not even get into that about what's going to happen. There's enough doom and gloom talk and right now to go into it. Let's go into the astrology. So everything is in the description box, right? You can link to this event to register for it in the description box from now until it starts. So you can always find it there as well. And I'm on all the platforms, YouTube, BitChute, not all of them, YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble right now. So anyway, let's get into the chart, guys. And the charts of the weekend. Oh, I wanted to show you something else real quick. Not this flyer. Where is it? So this was the original picture for the thumbnail, also linked in the description box. So I encourage you to go look at it for yourself and to get a sense, understand, what this picture is and why it looks like this. And, got the Milky Way right here. And it's called zodiacal light. And it's because of the way it has something to do with where we the position of the rings of the Milky Way in relation to us creates this extra light. So it's kind of got this yin yang thing going on. So I thought that was cool. But that's linked in the description box too. So you can read about zodiacal light, go to spaceweather.com, see what other cool photos are in their gallery from people who are just like, amateur astronomers and photographers. And they take this just amazing photography. Okay, let's get into it. All right. I don't know why it's been doing that lately, but giving like the white screen. But here we go. I'm glad it's Friday. It's crazy. I don't even really feel the need to speak on anything that's happening, because I think that at this point we should be prepared to really. I'm here to just help people, read the language and be able to interpret the hash marks and the guideposts in order to find your own way and make sure that your internalized sense of direction emotionally and spiritually and energetically is on point and calibrated, right? So there's so much that is going to be the grabbing of our attention and the, all of the resources that are being thrown into telling us and sharing with us and giving us presentations of what story wants to be told or is presented to us. It's going to be, there's just so much. And Mercury today, if you remember the new moon that we are part of, that new moon cycle that we are part of right now, that is ending, right? We're coming into the last bit of this phase. We're coming into the balsamic moon phase. The moon actually has crossed the galactic center already as of today and is moving into Capricorn. So this end of the moon phase, as I said on Telegram, this is a great time to reflect and to be more introspective, to assess what has happened over the course of the last couple weeks, because it is the moon that represents our internal landscape and how we feel. So coming over the galactic center and having that experience. And you can see here, actually, that part of that experience was quincunx, right? 150-degree angle, the 5/12ths, with the North Node, or Rahu, which is still in conjunction with Algol, the head of Medusa. So the soul's, the pull of our soul in order to evolve, like the direction the dragon is heading. Again, we really do need to cut the head off the snake in some ways, at a fundamentally objective reality, right? Whatever it represents to us and where it's at in our life is going to have a lot to do where these nodes are in your chart. But overall, we really do we really do in some ways. There's just so much that has to be, that we really, that's asking to be released, right? We need to cut the head off the snake. And that's not to say that Medusa doesn't have her own baggage and trauma that led her to being Medusa and that we shouldn't address it. But part of the journey is to realize that what has transpired is a result of, this identity becoming the primary identity. Whether or not she was, there's so many aspects about the story of Medusa and what has happened, right? She basically, she was mortal and she had 3 sisters. And the idea is that whether she was raped or she did it consensually or for whatever, she had sex with Poseidon in I believe it was, Athena's temple or Minerva's temple. Gosh, I can't remember exactly. I'll have to look into that. The idea, though, is that in another goddess's temple, and she was a priestess of that temple. So, and she was the one that took the punishment. Now, whether or not it was a punishment, whether or not it was some sort of alchemical process, because she was in fact mortal. I mean, there's so much going on in these stories that is really worth investigating, considering how incredibly intelligent the Greeks were, and the systems of philosophy and mathematics, and government, just everything that Greek culture has allowed for. I mean, to think that their spiritual and religious systems didn't hold the same meaning or the same intellect, I think, is silly. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack here, but the idea here is that it's an expression of something that was maybe unnatural, shouldn't happened, right? Or trauma, right? We just experience something that then allows this part of ourselves to come out, and it's part of the natural process to let these things go, right? Maybe it isn't unnatural, or maybe what it is just part of the natural cycle of nature, right? Which is the movement of energy through phases. And part of it is to adapt to it and to find your role within it. And this is where we've been really pulled. This is part of the Pleiadian revival. This is about reestablishing a relationship with planetary rhythm. and natural rhythm and all that it entails. The moon at the galactic center, pretty much at the same time in this quincunx, is, I think we we so want to bring our identity into form. Like, it's just such a strong draw to like tap into that creative, transformative energy of Sagittarius and bring our project our meaning out into an actual form, right? Put it into a sculpture. You can see it's not that these things are like completely opposed to each other. There just needs to be some moving around in order to get them to fit, some adjustment in the relationship. So maybe, aligning with our soul's journey a little bit more, which is what, having a dark moon in Capricorn like this is actually a great time, even more useful in terms of getting into, really like settling in and being kind of still and listening and assessing and reflecting about this whole lunar cycle. And part of it, again, there's aspects that are ready to either be released, or we are adapting, or we're just in communion with the planetary rhythm. And maybe if we can find a way to identify the meaning with that, then we have something very solid that we can mold, or an identity or a vision that we can mold. But again, this is about the meaning that we create together, whereas Taurus is about just the objective world as it is. You can see how these things are naturally in a quincunx, right? That they're not in a strong challenge. They just, you just have to adjust yourself a little bit in order for them to be complementary, I suppose. So now that the moon, let's see where the moon is now. That was, we're at the last degree of Sagittarius, like the physical representation of all of this dogma or religion or meaning. And the Sabian symbol is the Pope, right? And not a literal, it's not a literal reference to the Catholic Pope, but more of that so far is the most accessible representation of a physical, physical on earth identity of the meaning that is really the fire, right? The Holy Spirit, the creative energy that catalyzes the change or the reaction or the alchemy. It finds an actual representative, right? And this is the transition from the moon into Capricorn. So, we're now going to start moving into a much more serious, right? I think we gathered quite a bit of strength and feeling of what we can, like inner strength, like really gathering our resources from our collective belief systems that we adhere to. And now we're going to, it's going to solidify maybe a little bit, and certainly we are going to feel a sense of seriousness and a sense of what needs to get done. And it might be a little bit limiting and constricting in terms of our emotions, where Sagittarius is just like, hey, we can gather our meaning from anywhere around us, right? It's all in the creative process. This is going to be a little bit different. And the moon's going to meet Vesta and Mars and Venus all together at the same degree. He's going to meet Pluto and move into Aquarius. So we're wrapping some things up here, but that's where it really starts, is this galactic, center, and then the Pleiades, right? This quincunx. So we're on point. There's just some adjustments that really need to be made, and this is a great opportunity to do it, because speaking of Andromeda, right? The galactic center of Sagittarius not only is in an aspect to Andromeda, it's also an aspect to Arcturus. So you have these two really, one is outside of this galaxy entirely, and then Arcturus is about, is pretty, operating at a pretty high density as far as I understand it, right? They carry the keys to the wisdom of how the universe actually works, right? They are... Arcturian starseeds have this, they really are able to harness and utilize and teach about these powerful, the universal law and how it can be used to, Arcturian starseeds are really into things like quantum mechanics and mathematics and sacred geometry and things like ley lines and crop circles, right? These are all natural principles in action, having an impact on the world around you. Also things like art, like architecture, obviously teaching, but design, right? Sustainable living and design. These are all types of vocations that an Arcturian starseed is, or interest, right? Ancient civilizations, that type of thing. They are really drawn to. And it's really just because they have access to this well of knowledge about how it all works and then transmits it, sometimes without even speaking, right? Telepathy is really high with these individuals. They tend to communicate a lot through sound and color and geometry, right? So musicians and writers and very deep philosophical questions here, right? Deep thoughts, very deep thoughts, and needing a lot of proof, right? So there is a very powerful arrangement here just in this particular aspect right now, with the moon tapping into freedom and tapping into wisdom and wanting to bring that into form within ourselves somehow. How do we manifest this? And the soul journey pulling us of like, just be, right? Just be in alignment with your heart open. There's a lot going on right now. All right, so here we go. The other thing I want to bring up is that that Mercury is at 12 to 13 degrees Aquarius today. So now it's out of its retro shadow. It's moving into this completely new, for now, as not that new, but new in the last year or so, Aquarian positions, but it wasn't retrograde in Aquarius at all last year. So it's been here a lot longer. So there's just been a lot more high wavelength, high frequency, collective energy, right? The wavelengths have just been that much more impactful, I think, on our minds and in our cognition, and even in, the things we're thinking about, and the way that we're thinking about them is much more at a collective societal level. This degree was the degree of the new moon. So we're finishing this cycle, and this cycle has, it started with a very simple concept, a barometer. Right? That's the Sabian symbol for 13 degrees of Aquarius, right? A barometer. It's a piece of equipment that measures the changes in pressure, and then you can make reasonable predictions about what's coming, right? The weather. And the society as a whole, condition yourself, the two parts, the two polarity aspects of yourself, right? If you can come into balance in your heart between how you feel on the inside and how you express that on the outside, we had the opportunity to really grow as this instrument, right? And now we're really getting a chance to assess if how that's gone, right? Have we been able to hold the intensity of the energy? We saw that with the full moon. Are we able to, how does it feel when we have to actually gather our resources from that the intensity of that energy? When we come together and we work together, are we able to gather our resources? That was the third quarter moon. How do we feel when that happens, right? And that was a pretty clear crisis point, right, with what's happening at a global politics, basically. And now we are assessing, how did we grow? How did we develop? Are we capable of measuring the changes in the social environment in order to anticipate? Because it's going to become very important, not only that we do so, but to also, if we can anticipate and we're that connected in, and we don't need the constant barrage of what other people are telling us in all kinds of everything, right? All social media, every news outlet, regardless if it's mainstream, if it's alternative, if it's basically identifies either one of those things, even just people's personalities and their social media posts, all of it, right? If they're everybody's sharing all kinds of information, and there's such a market for our awareness and our focus that there's just going to be so much. And so the ability to tap our mind not into that, but into the collective as a whole, because it's really just about us and what we're going to do. That's all there is to it. There's no magic. I don't really feel like there's any magic bullet. There may be some operations that come forward. I mean, that's certainly what's happening in Ukraine, in some way, right? Like a decision has been made, but so we're going to have an opportunity to kind of assess mentally, I wonder, how did this process go over this month? Is my mind able to read the data? Right? It's one thing to look at a barometer and look at it, what it's doing. It's another to know how to read it. And this is going to be, I think, where Mercury is going to really assist us. So we'll pay attention to what it does this weekend and how it makes connections to everything else, because it's going to matter, I think, in terms of keeping our heads on straight. So let's see here. Mars and Vesta and Venus are all traveling together in Capricorn. They are going over the position of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction of January 2020, right? The big one, the beginning of the end, right? The power to turn the hourglass, to wind and start the clock, right? That's what happened. And now Vesta, right? Or Hestia, the hearth flame of the community, the eternal flame that holds us all together and does everything that we need to keep everybody warm and safe and fed, right? That is the value of fire. It is the catalytic energy that allows us to create, Venus and Mars with her as well. I mean, there's just a lot of energy right here of coming back around and allowing us to connect into our to that eternal flame to hold us all together. And then Venus and Mars along here together, right? Like we have the support of our own healthy ego and our action and our ambition, and we're sensitive to what that feels like and what's valuable about that, and what allows us to connect to a sense of safety and security materially, and especially in a social institution, be it your nation, be it the globe, be it whatever, is going through massive demolition. And of course, where Pluto is a big part of this. So the moon's going to make all those connections as it moves through Capricorn this weekend, and making it a very emotionally and personal. And remember, we're looking at a dark moon. It's at 30% luminosity is today. So it's just going to keep getting darker and darker, which means that our subconscious and our intuition and our psychic channel and our feelings become less and less obvious in terms of what they look like, right? Or what the image is back to us. So we have to, this is why it's good to be in a balsamic moon phase, to assess and reflect and be still and listen, right? And take stock, take inventory, assess the situation. And Mercury is going to, like I said, big part of that. So let's start looking at today isn't that mind-blowing in terms of the transit. So let's actually look at tomorrow, the 26th, because this is going to be a lot different. Oh, one thing I do want to point out about today, though, that is very striking, and this is just something for your own, especially if you have Draco starseed markings in your chart. The sun is opposite Draco right now, 7 degrees Pisces. So this is something to consider right now. And if you're going to, we're still got this Pisces vibe going on with obviously Neptune and Jupiter and the sun. And I don't want to get too much into the Draco piece right now, but if you have Draco starseed markings, and you do, and we've had conversations about it, just, remind yourself where they are, and also remind yourself that the sun is in Pisces right now. And this is having us all identify, whether we like it or not, with the spiritual collective, and giving ourselves to that process. And 8 degrees of Pisces, 7 to 8 degrees to Pisces is really about hearing the call. Not even just hearing the call, but also making the call. Those that are, there is some sort of inkling right now of a new earth that is coming forward, just in general. And this happens every year, right? The sun comes around to this degree every year. And so it's the same, there's the same dynamic around this time, which is really stretching everyone, because it's the time where, we're almost there to spring, but it's not quite. And it just snowed again last night, right? And I'm so ready to see things pop up out of the snow, at least where we are. And there are stirrings, right? You may see some things starting to give you the idea that, like, oh, spring is coming. It's coming, right? But now we have Jupiter and Neptune as part of this party here. So it's way more than just spring is coming. It's way more meaningful. It's way more cosmic and transcendental, right? Way more karmic with Neptune involved. So I just want to bring that up, that the sun is opposite Draco. So that's, it's just a point for you to explore. And of course, you can book a reading, a starseed reading, if you're interested in finding out what your starseed markings are and understanding astrology, because it's kind of, it's a big part of it. It really does help direct and guide your focus in terms of your own journey and your own soul's journey and understanding yourself better. I think that there was huge gaps that got filled in with the starseed portion for me personally, after really starting to dive into my own astrology. So, all right, we're going to look at the moon in mostly Capricorn tomorrow. So the first thing that I want to point out is that right at that time that the sun actually is in opposition to Draco, oh, that's interesting, is the moon's going to sextile the sun, right? That 60-degree angle. It's the descent of the spiritual meeting the material and activating in some sort of internal alchemy, right? There is harmony, but there needs to be an investment or taking advantage of the opportunity. You have to act in some way or participate in some way. I think that it's really just as simple as if we can feel into, the role that we came here to play as starseeds, especially Draco, because I think a lot of Draco starseeds are here not just to clear the Draco, but clear their own karma as well. So, but just in general, the idea that we all have a role to play, and to enjoy it, and to know that we all have, that everybody has a role to play, and it wouldn't be this beautiful aviary if there weren't the diversity of all of the beings to begin with, and to just be like, yeah, this is cool. I'm cool with this. And so I think this can really actually give us an infusion of emotional stability for a moment in a place where the sun in Pisces can be very just like, oh, I don't have an identity. I'm one with everything else, and that's how I'm going to identify myself, which is why there are a lot of exits right now. I think this is going to really, this could go either way. It depends on your spiritual surrender, right? It could be the propaganda. It could be to an illness. It could be to fantasy or escapism. It could be to addiction, but it also could be to God. It could be to Jesus. It could be to any type of religion, or not even religion. That's more of a ninth house thing. It's the experience of the dissolution back to it's the realm of the mystic. So I think that this can either way, it's going to be a supportive moment. You just have to decide which, matrix of reality you want to be aligned with. If you're aligned with natural law and the unfolding of natural reality, which, with the North Node, with the Pleiades, I would say that that's a pretty strong, draw towards natural communion here. And I know that the Christians don't like that because they feel like that nature worship is evil. And I would agree that worshiping something that is part of something bigger is definitely going to cause some problems. So anyway, I think that just identifying what your role is emotionally and internally, like feeling into it, kind of sinking into it, like listening for it, I think is going to assist for those that are here to be part of this rebirth of humanity. And like I said, this happens every year with the sun in Pisces, but it's way more impactful with all of Neptune and Jupiter as part of this picture. Okay, so it's going to square. Okay, yes, we're going to have this sextile to the sun. Is going to square Chiron, right? This is, again, I think that we really do we want to participate. We want to put our energy into something, capitalize on our group efforts. We want to reach like the highest potential of human society in interaction with nature or natural law. We want to do that. And there's probably some sort of feeling we'll get that'll be like, oh, that feels like the highest potential of this type of situation. But again, here's our square to Chiron, right? That is, again, it's going to snap back either into getting very hyper focused on our own survival, our own sense of identity, right? An unhealthy ego, getting very aggravated and inflamed. And maybe there are going to be other people that are activating that for us, of course. But really, it's the I think really where it comes from is a trigger of Chiron that then is like, no, you can't trust, you can't actually, you have to be in charge, right? You can't let it go and allow it to flower naturally, or for the, the forest to come to its own, on its own, right? You have to hold your ego in place and hold yourself and your identity in place. So it's going to either be that or a sense of no identity, because you're just like, well, if I don't give myself emotionally to this process, we'll never get there, right? So keep an eye on that. This is coming into early Saturday morning, so you may have some irritation in your sleep if that's where where you'll be during this moon time. And then it comes right from there into a trine to Uranus, which is actually great because this can be a real awakening in your own emotional or intuitive state, maybe a subconscious awakening, something poking, maybe there's some there may be an investigation, right? There may be a sense of wanting to explore the underlying mechanisms of this natural law, for instance, right? Or the socio-political systems or the economy, right? All the Capricornian aspects. You want to get into how nature works, for instance, and I think that when the Uranus and the moon are in a trine together, especially something like an Earth trine, it actually is really kind of allows some sort of emotional freedom to feel outside of the box, consider like innovative perspectives. And in this case, it's the fact that our desires, our socialized desires, by taking in everything around us that we could have, by window shopping reality, and the fact that it's so unstable and it's so glitchy, is actually working in our favor emotionally, so that we can start digging under what that is even about, right? How it all fits together. We may not have even considered that if there wasn't this upheaval in Taurus. So I think that's really exciting. So even though we may feel a sense of like, no, I got to keep my identity and survival in check because of Chiron, the moon's going to come right within the hour and then come into this trine, or like hour and a half, right? Or whatever, come into this trine with Uranus. This is like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, like it, you don't have time to focus on anything else when reality is shifting all over the place. But this is exactly the type of, it's the type of like shift in perspective that can allow us to really listen to how it all fits together. Maybe we're about to go see like another level here under, another level beyond or underneath like the false hologram, which we are realizing exists because of Uranus, honestly. If it wasn't for that glitching, I don't think people would be even aware. So this is really cool, actually. I'm getting a good feel on Saturday to have like a start to this. I mean, Chiron and the square is not great either, but there's opportunity here, because then the moon comes into a sextile with Jupiter, who is in the planet Jupiter is in a Syrian starseed position at the moment in Pisces, and will be as well with the new moon on the 2nd, which we're getting pretty close. And so again, another sextile from Capricorn to Pisces, the activation, the ascent of the material, Capricorn, and the descent of the spiritual, which would be Pisces, right? They come together, they merge in some way. There are aspects of the culture that have remained that we can, it's important that we're able to really assess and figure out what is essential from past experiences and what isn't, right? There are aspects that have withstood the elements of time, which is a big part of the Capricornian aspect, that still remain. And knowing the difference between what's essential from that time or that past or previous structures and what's not is something that we, I think, is going to really allow for us to align with a bigger picture about how to shield and protect ourselves, if that makes sense. I don't think it does. The idea here is that for as much as the sword represents a symbol of God's will working through the individual, right, at a esoteric level or a mystical level, the other side to that is also the shield of our intellect, the shield of our cognition or our mind that operates as a camouflage, so that we can still maintain our relationship entirely with the world around us, but also to not be, it's important to have both elements. If you have the sword and you're and it almost invites in the power dynamic or the duel to have it, but you also need the shield. There has to be something there. And Jupiter, for whatever reason, is going to expand it, give us, I feel like, a large shield, and maybe it'll be a symbol out there in the world as an individual or as a leader that allows for that, or it's just our own inner our understanding expands and becomes that shield in certain ways, and maybe it's that allows for the extraction of what is actually important behind the scenes. Ooh, I hadn't thought about that before, but in terms of a dark moon in Capricorn, like what is relevant, what is valuable from this matrix or socio-political system, these institutions. Oh, interesting. It's like, yeah, there's this large shield, our understanding, or maybe some sort of representative or advocate for us that will allow for something to allow for that shield, that camouflage, that protective barrier in some ways, while we're able to extract for us personally what is meaningful. That is very interesting. That is really, I didn't get that read until just now. An ancient bas relief carved in granite, right? Granite is something else. Remains a witness to a long forgotten culture. Wow. That does feel like, here, let me give you this big, let me expand on your understanding of things, and give you resources, right? Jupiter is definitely about good luck. And in Pisces, it's like this really strong spiritual vision expanded. spiritual vision. And so the sextile to this moon is pretty awesome, right? Witness to a long forgotten culture. I think that there's going to be some personal extraction behind that shield, which is very, very interesting on many levels. I'm sure you can relate. And then by the end of the day, actually, let's look at this chart, which is that the moon will be in an opposition to Black Moon Lilith, which has been coming up a lot. She's now retrograde, still in Cancer at this point, and the difference between taking care of ourselves, that is going to be almost like a primal drive to take care of our own responsibilities right in front of us, versus, aligning emotionally with the political and political power of some way. Oh, that is so interesting. So this opposition, look at where are we at here? It's, Saturday afternoon, basically, is, I think, going to really test people in terms of where they're putting their trust in a power structure, right? And versus something so deep and primal and very Medusa-like, by the way, that is just like, no, we got to take care of what's right in front of us, right? For survival, rather than like, okay, so I feel aligned with this symbol of this political power and the fact that it provides safety and structure. That's very interesting that this is coming up over this weekend. Very interesting indeed. So Sunday the 27th, the moon is going to then move into Aquarius. So let's see, where are we here? We're going to exit out of that, exit out of that. There we go. And now the moon is going to, or the sun, I'm sorry. Now the sun is going to start moving into the territory that aligns it with Lyra. So the sun, 9 to 10 degrees Pisces, is going to be a Lyra starseed activation, and is moving, where are you? Moving into a new territory, right? We're starting to the quickening in terms of our own individual expression and identification. We're going to start getting some energy here to be like, okay, I see now how to align myself with these goals, right? And kind of get pushed forward a little bit, and which is great for the Lyran, because it's not about winning or competition, but the Lyran is just like, I know what it takes to win, right? I know what it takes to actually get something done, because the Lyrans were the original progenitors, as far as I understand it. They're so ancient and old, and they've been everywhere in the galaxy. So, Sunday. The moon is, like I said, it's going to move into Aquarius. But well before that happens, we are going to have some relationships. It's going to, while we're sleeping, basically, for many of us, not everybody, while many of us are sleeping, maybe in Australia, you'll be waking up by this point, as the moon passes over all of this Capricorn. But yeah, the moon's going to make all these connections to Vesta, Venus, Mars, and eventually Pluto, right? And so this is all our dreams. They're going to be interesting on Saturday into Sunday, that is for sure, right? And I think that it's important that we identify within ourselves how we feel emotionally, how we feel in terms of the material world, Venus, right? And our sense of comfort and stability. And also, too, with Mars, how we emotionally feel and what emotionally drives or where our impulses are in terms of action. And then eventually the moon will meet Pluto, and this is where we have a very strong emotional connection to power, right? And what that entails. And that can be a lot of very a lot of repressed stuff can come out at this time with, a direct channel from that place. And certainly can be very cathartic, but also can easily throw people off, because it can be very sudden and overwhelming. Access to these deeper and darker power dynamics that Pluto represents. But I think it's important that that we are going to have an opportunity to really sit with and engage a deep part of ourselves about the reliance that we've had on on traditions and aspects of our institutions that have already gone under the chopping block of Pluto, and even though Venus and Vesta and Mars are all here at this position, it's going to be important that we identify all the different aspects of our relationship to all of the beautiful things our culture and our society has allowed for us to gain comfort and appreciation. Because Pluto, like I said, Pluto's already gone over and a lot has been on the chopping block, and there's now this goes back to being able to identify aspects of a long forgotten culture and to identify what's essential and what's not. This is going to be directly related to this experience. So by the time you get to Saturday night into Sunday morning, I have a feeling that the dream state may be very deep. You may not even remember, right? It may be happening at a much deeper level, some construction. But I feel like there will certainly be deep feels into the depth of power by the time the moon gets to Pluto. So before that even happens, though, the moon is in a sextile to Neptune. And this, again, is in direct sextile to the point of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, right? The recompense, the balancing of accounts, the giving of the awards for bravery to the soldier, right? They gave themselves and their service to the community, and this is a very tangible, the tangible receiving of that which has been given in service, right? And so we're going to feel, again, Mars and Venus have already been here, and we're going to feel into it again, right? We're going to have a very emotional, personal experience, right? And a draw into this space and something that we can personally access in some way. And a sextile to Neptune, right? That when we receive at this energetic level with the moon very directly, we receive this rebalancing in some ways. Again, it's going to release energy or make energy available to invest into this conscious ideal at a transcendental and spiritual level, right? With Neptune in Pisces, giving of ourselves. And like I said, Venus and Mars, the god of war, the goddess of love, this has already gone over this point. Each of them has made this connection. And now we each individually in our own personal way are going to also have this connection. It's going to be what kind of closes this gap in some ways. So, and Vesta is involved too in all of this. So as the moon moves through into Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, it's going to meet at the Pluto, the whole degree of the Pluto return point, or 28 degrees Capricorn. So the moon makes it here, and we have also a very personal connection to the power of transformation, and that is the whole process of destruction, demolition, emptiness, and then growth is all part of it. And so it's going to be... what we come to in terms of what is essential, what has value, what we've come to rely on, all of this is going to be something we're going to carry with us as we have to look at the ultimate destruction, which is of the very walls of our cave, or the very bars of our prison. Because as much as a beautiful aviary seems to be a free place, and it is, and those birds don't know any different, really, that they're in there, and they have their habitat, they have diversity, they have everything they need, but there's something that is maintaining the outer structure. And in the case of us, this is our governments and economy and these other institutions and the government of the United States of America. I wouldn't necessarily say the Constitution, but the declaration of us as a nation is going through its demolition, and that will become something that we have to contend with very directly with this moon meeting Pluto at this point. And there'll be plenty of opportunities to go through this again. We got 2 more passes over this point this year with Pluto. Let's see here. also, before that even happens, I got ahead of myself here, is that the moon comes into a trine with Rahu. That means it'll be in a sextile to the south node, but the moon is also in a trine to the north node. So let's bring the Pleiadian aspect back into the picture, which is, there's this moment here where we actually can see behind the veil. Like we see the mist of, we see the mist in the background, and like, oh, you realize that there's actually something behind the veil. There is some sort of energy source that pervades all of the living world, or all the institutional framework around you, right? There is, and it's the energy of the collective. It's the Aquarian wavelength that you start to become aware of as you're finishing out Capricorn. And the moon is going to trine directly to the north node, the natural planetary energy that is the same basic thing, just one is fixed earth, fixed air, so different elements, but still the same fixed position, and this idea of a natural wavelength. But this is this moon in a trine to it right before it comes to meet Pluto is also just like, okay, like ground yourself into the Pleiadian nature as then the moon comes and meets Pluto, which is also very Pleiadian, but you'll have to understand that it's the full spectrum. This is what you learn from the Pleiadian signature, is fully open heart, and it's the full spectrum from, that it's really a cycle. It's not actually, or it's a wavelength, right? It's a wave function. There's no linear beginning and then just end. It's a cycle. So again, this is coming through the evening, first thing in the morning, and then coming to meet Pluto from Saturday night into Sunday. Should be very powerful. Very, very powerful. And then we have the moon come into Aquarius. So it'll meet the point that at the new moon, right? So we'll have an opportunity to, again, re-engage with that experience when it's time. And as the moon moves through Aquarius, it's mostly going to, it's going to meet Ceres and it's going to meet Pallas, who are both in early parts of Aries and Gemini. So the Aquarius moon is going to allow us to be a little bit more aloof, right? That we can have some sort of detachment from the experience of our emotions, and realize that the experience of our emotions and feeling is the energy that then is directed out and part of the whole. But it does allow us to be a little bit more pragmatic, or it's certainly a little bit more like Vulcan about things. So anybody has a moon in Aquarius, you know what I'm talking about. And just really just, and sometimes just thinking or feeling things that are way bigger than like the standard like experience. But anyway, these relationships to Pallas Athena and early Aries, Ceres and early Gemini is just going to be like strategy, right? Connecting in emotionally to a strategy and a sextile, just having a mental connection here at the moment of the moon in a trine to Ceres is when we can kind of get out of this intellectual state that is like a primary thing, right? And that's a function of being a human right now, at least. If we can do that, at least to a certain extent, and again, it's like connecting into the seasonal cycle, connecting into all of the changes at a planetary level, the seasonal cycle, the necessity for a seasonal cycle for actual growth in this on this planet. If we can tap into something that is, I don't want to say pre-intellectual, but there is a little bit of nostalgia to be like, remember when we just felt and we didn't have to like over analyze every goddamn thing around us. That's going to really impact our ability to not only harness, but demonstrate some sort of really strong healing potential within ourselves, and to feel the potential, right? Of just like connect back into cycles, connect back into the necessity of cycles, and that time is not linear. And and that we see it all the time. And just because things come to an end, quote unquote, doesn't mean that there's actually any end, but it's just a cycle going around, and it's a redistribution of energy. And if we can connect into that, I feel like that then we each have access to that energy that we can use for healing, right? Because people are certainly have a lot to say. They're talking, people are scared, people are depressed, people are just having a hard time in general. And we anticipated this, and I kind of was just like, I don't want to, nobody wants to get their hopes up, and this is not exactly a great type of experience. I don't know why it keeps doing that, guys. It keeps whiting out like that. Okay. Sorry. That's okay. We're going to come into Monday just to kind of get an idea here, because it's really the first into the second where the new moon's going to be. And so there'll be, we'll do transmissions leading up to that point. There'll be forecasts per sign that are coming out. The big things that are coming in the end of this lunar cycle that are worth addressing right now are that both Venus and Mars are going to be in a trine to the North Node and in a sextile to the South Node. So that relationship is going to be preceded in a very subtle way by the moon, as I just talked about. And then these two are both going to be in that same position where there's going to be a tearing the veil away in some ways, and then Venus becoming very us becoming very aware in the world, the material world of value. So our relationships and our resources and things like that, and our comfortability, we're also going to be like, oh, I see what's back behind that veil now. And I see that there's an underlying energy that is responsible for what's going on here. And again, they're going to both be in a trine to the North Node. This is really strong Pleiadian connections again. And it's not going to be comfortable for everybody for that veil to be pulled away, but we know what's coming. And so that's, let's see, what day is that? That is on Monday, the 28th. And then the moon is still in Aquarius. It will make a T-square to that same position of the nodes on the 1st, I believe, right? It's going to come into late, right? This is where the full moon, the sun was at the full moon, but it's going to also make a T-square to the nodes at that point. And even though we are being pulled in this very experiential direction, this very Pleiadian direction, we will have to account for something within us that is like, well, we still have to be able to live in this society and be able to measure what is happening in that social context so that we can survive and thrive. I mean, the moon at 27 degrees here of Aquarius is the natal new moon, the natal moon of the United States. So again, do we have the capacity within our citizenry, the actual people themselves, to hold the incredible amount of resources and energy that'll be necessary to ride out the storm, so to speak? So that's something that'll come up right before the new moon, basically, because that's what's going to happen on the 2nd. The moon comes into Pisces. It's going to meet the sun. Jupiter's right here, and it's, a massive, this is a huge avatar moment, and Jupiter is in some ways going to give us a symbolic representation for all of us to rally behind, either within ourselves, someone in our life, maybe a leader in some ways that's going to be like, leading the troops into battle in some ways. So there's going to be plenty more about that when we get to the time. And that's also when, Mars and Venus are going to also meet Pluto. So wow, it's going to be, March is where it's at, dude. And we've been talking about that for a while too. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I think I've made all the announcements that I need to make about things. So if you are interested in a reading, you can go to my website. That's linked in the description box below. The registration link for the Astrology Summit is also in the description box. Subscribestar is down there. And if you're not on my mailing list, you can do that through my website. And that way you can get updates on offerings and specials and sales and presentations and things things like that. So $3 a month for Subscribe Star. The astrology forecasts are only going to be available to subscribers from now on. And I like it that way. That was the plan. So, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I'm just kind of going through the chat here and seeing what's going on. And I have daffodils up yet. It's snowing in Nashville today, and it's odd. Yeah, it snowed last night too. And I know you made this comment probably a while ago, Megan. I'm just coming over to look at the chat because I get distracted otherwise. So I have zero doubts that we're about to experience another level. That feeling is a strong one. Yeah. And you know what? I don't want to like always share not everything that I get as a message, as a dream, a vision, whatever. 'Cause they're really strong right now. And I don't know if you guys seen the Schumann. I'll put it up on Telegram, actually. I have some thoughts about it because it really started to spike again. And I did say, I think the other day, I was like, I bet we're going to see the Schumann start to really amp up again without a lot of solar activity because there's not much going on right now. There may be a coronal whole stream coming over the weekend, but there's not like a lot of solar activity and they haven't really been spraying so much. So, but I do sense as well that even the most rational and logical people are going to really have a hard time soon. That was the sense that I got, right? I keep picking up on so much because, Capricorn's my 12th house. So all this Capricorn energy of the social institution and what's going on with Pluto and Venus and Mars and now the moon, right? It's all, I'm feeling the ripple effect at the most fundamental energetic level. And so I'm feeling it and I'm feeling what's coming through, not just for me, but for a lot of people. And like I said, even the most logical people are going to really, really start struggling, I think. And their logic is going to, if that's what they're using entirely and not tapping into their intuition, and not doing the work to evolve themselves out of just that primary thing, it's going to be rough. And so I agree with you, Emily, when you say you have zero doubts that we're about to see and experience another level. I think we are, and I think it's going to be the next real test. I don't think it's going to be nuclear. There's nothing about that seems real to me. Why would nobody's going to do it? It'd be dropped by now, right? You think that they wouldn't be dropped by now. It's kind of absurd. So I don't feel that, but something is coming, or another strong push for sure. Are we going to be the new normies? Well, that's a really, really good question. What happens when your entire identity has been on being not a normie, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is just this is just normal now. I will say that when I first moved, the first time I ever visited Portland, which was in the very early 2000s before it turned into Portlandia, because there's a difference, I assure you, living through that. There's a Portland and then there's a Portlandia. For sure. And I wanted to leave Portlandia really badly. I'm not happy about the circumstances in which I left Portlandia, but I'll take it. And when I first visited Portland, I remember being like, oh, I'm not the weirdo around here. I'm just a normal person. And I was elated. I was so excited to just go under the radar in a place like Portland, Oregon, because I was just you know what I mean? There were a lot more hardcore, edgier, punk, weird people than me at that point, and I was just like, oh, thank God. So maybe that'll be something. It'll be a sigh of relief for people who have been on the outcast version of things for so long. We'll see. We shall see. So, my friends, again, if you are interested in a reading, if you want to book a session, or you want to just see what Catalyst Energies is all about, just go to the website. It's in the description box below. In the meantime, have a great weekend. I'm still working on things for y'all, for subscribers. I'm really struggling with putting something called Starseed Ministry behind a paywall, even if it is just $3 a month. It just is really, I'm not liking what that sounds and feels like to me. So I still, and that still needs to happen. That space I feel very drawn to creating that space, because there's a lot of gaps that I feel called to help bridge in some number of ways. But I also want to make sure that there's space for the subscribers for us to have a Zoom chat. So I'm going to try to I am going to work on a schedule that will, that I can reasonably commit to, that allows for all of those things, okay? Because I think they're all important. So in the meantime, Starseed's Guide to Pluto Return is going to be coming out very soon. So keep an eye out for that. If you are on Subscribestar, I don't know how they send you an email if I if I post to subscribers only on the thread. So I'll link it into Telegram if that's the case, and so that people still know that it's there. So you guys have a great weekend. I love you. Thank you for being here. Please take care of yourself. Please reach out if you need support. And let's connect soon, okay? I'll definitely see you on Monday for sure. At least as sure as I am that the sun's gonna come up, but who knows, right? All right, guys. I will catch you on the flip side. Take care of yourselves. Peace out. Love you. Bye.